Listen, before we start, I need you to imagine something with me. You're sitting right next to me, and I'm asking you a question that almost no man dares to admit out loud. How many times have you hugged a woman thinking you were doing everything right, when in reality she only felt one more gesture, without real emotion, without true impact, without deep desire? I know it sounds harsh, almost uncomfortable, but you have to listen to this carefully because what you're about to discover can completely transform the way a woman perceives you when you take her in your arms. And I'll tell you clearly, it's not the hug itself that makes a woman desire you more. It's how you do it, the timing, and what you communicate without saying a single word. That's where most men fail. Not from lack of intention, but because no one ever taught them that a simple hug can be a powerful tool for psychological connection. Yes, psychological. Welcome to relationship psychology. And here's the controversial part. Many women unconsciously decide if a man truly attracts them in the first 3 seconds of a hug. And no, it has nothing to do with your strength, your height, or your physical appearance. It has to do with simple details that most people completely ignore. Think about it. A hug can reveal whether you're a confident man, anxious, distant, needy, or magnetic. And even if you don't believe it, women feel all of that. They read your energy, interpret your intention, detect your presence, and these things speak much louder than your looks or your words. That's why this discussion isn't about absurd tricks or exaggerated behaviors. You're not going to learn how to manipulate, dominate, or force anyone. On the contrary, I'm going to teach you how to use 5 simple, respectful, and completely natural gestures that make a woman feel safe, seen, and connected to you. And yes, that make her desire you more because the way you hug her triggers a powerful emotional response. So stay with me until the end, because if you've ever wondered why some men seem to generate more connection and impact effortlessly, the answer might lie in something as basic as the way they hug. And today, you're going to learn exactly how to do it. Your posture reveals your level of inner security. Let me start this section as directly as possible because it's something almost no man wants to accept, but that all women perceive without fail. Your posture when you hug her speaks for you before you even open your mouth, and I want you to listen to this as if we were sitting together a meter apart, and I was telling you something that could completely change the way a woman sees you. Look, many men think it's just a hug. It's simply bringing bodies closer, wrapping arms around, and that's it. But no. For a woman, a hug is an emotional scan. She assesses your energy, your presence, your security, your intention, all of that in the first 3 seconds. And the most controversial part is that she can sense if you're confident just from the way you hold your posture. She doesn't need words, doesn't need time, just that initial moment. So let's start with the essentials. First, your posture reveals if you're comfortable with yourself. When a man slouches, pulls his shoulders forward, or leans too much, what he projects isn't humility. It's insecurity. And no, it has nothing to do with being shy or reserved. It has to do with the psychological message you're sending. A woman feels when a man seems to shrink in her presence, and even if she doesn't always judge it, she interprets it as a lack of conviction. Now listen carefully. A firm, natural, and relaxed posture completely changes her perception. I'm not talking about puffing out your chest or exaggerating masculinity because that gets noticed too. I'm talking about standing straight without tension, opening your chest naturally, occupying your space without invading hers. That balance conveys something powerful: quiet security. And here's what most people don't know. Women aren't looking for a dominant hug. They're looking for a hug with presence. A man who feels physically present, emotionally stable, and energetically solid. It's a subtle mix, but when you get it right, she feels it instantly. Second, your posture reveals your intention. If you enter the hug quickly, abruptly, as if you're seeking something more than basic connection, the energy shifts. It feels forced, anxious, like you're trying to rush a moment that should be natural. But when you approach with calm, respecting her space, letting her clearly see your movement, what you communicate is emotional control. And believe me, that's one of the most attractive signals a man can send. Third, your body alignment matters more than you think. An unbalanced hug where you seem to hang on one side or lean too far forward feels childish, improvised, unsure. On the other hand, when you align your shoulders with hers, keep your feet planted firmly, and your center doesn't shift, you convey stability. And yes, emotional stability is felt physically. Here's the really controversial part now. When your posture is firm, calm, and balanced, You trigger a trust response in her mind, and when a woman trusts you, she automatically feels more connected and more emotionally receptive. But of course, it's not about adopting an artificial or robotic posture. That would be counterproductive. It's about understanding that your posture is the first message you send to a woman when you hug her. Before your hands, before your voice, before any gesture, your body speaks for you. And I want you to remember this every time she's close to you. A hug isn't just physical contact. It's an emotional language. And your posture is the first sentence she reads. Next time you approach a woman, don't think about impressing. Think about projecting calm, because a calm, present, confident man is always more desired. The silent mistake that cools desire in less than 3 seconds. Listen to this as if we were walking together down the street and I suddenly stopped you to say something no one has ever told you, but that could change your results with women forever. Most men make a mistake so silent, so small, and so common when hugging that it can extinguish a woman's desire in less than 3 seconds. Yes, that fast. And the worst part is that almost no one realizes it. This mistake has nothing to do with your physique, your strength, or your experience. It has to do with something a woman feels immediately: unnecessary tension. That micro moment when your body reveals anxiety, haste, or discomfort. That second when, without realizing it, you squeeze too hard, become rigid, breathe poorly, or freeze completely. And here's the most controversial part. Women detect this masculine tension faster than they detect intention. Why? Because bodily tension is one of the main indicators of emotional insecurity. And even if a man thinks he's being firm, strong, or doing things right, a woman often feels that he's nervous, doubting, or disconnected. Let me explain it clearly. When you hug a woman with a rigid body, she doesn't feel security. She feels distance. She senses you're not calm, that you lack emotional control, and that, even if it's unfair to many men, directly affects how she perceives you. Think about it. Have you ever felt nervous and tried to hide it? Well, she probably felt it. Tension is a silent language, and the body doesn't know how to lie. Now, here's the part most people ignore. Tension doesn't just cool the hug, it cools the emotion. For a woman, a hug needs to feel warm, natural, fluid. No matter if you've known her for years or just minutes, if your body sends stress signals, her emotional system shuts down. Not because she doesn't like you, but because the human body reacts to what it interprets as discomfort. And here's the most important explanation. If your body is tense, she can't relax. If you don't surrender to the moment, she can't flow, she disconnects. That doesn't mean you should become a structureless doll. It means finding the balance between firmness and softness, presence and relaxation, intention and naturalness. So let me teach you how to avoid this silent mistake. First, breathe before hugging her. Really breathe. A man who breathes deeply and naturally projects calm. Calm is felt, and when you're calm, she perceives it as security. Second, relax your shoulders. If your shoulders are tense, the hug becomes mechanical. Just releasing that area can completely change how she feels your presence. Third, slow down the pace. Don't enter the hug like it's a quick formality. Approach her with calm intention. A man who moves without haste always feels more confident. Fourth, let your arms accompany, not squeeze. A hug isn't about strength, but emotional containment. And finally, the most important. A woman always feels when a man is emotionally present and when he's not. If you eliminate tension, you eliminate coldness. If you eliminate haste, you eliminate disconnection. If you eliminate nervousness, you allow her desire to activate naturally. Because in the end, hugging isn't about impressing, it's about connecting. And connection always comes from tranquility, the minimal contact that women remember. Listen to this as if we were sitting face to face, and I was speaking to you with the sincerity a true friend would use. There's a type of almost invisible minimal contact that women remember far more than you imagine. And the most curious and controversial part is that even if many won't admit it, this small gesture can linger in their mind for days. It's not big, not noticeable, not intense, but it's emotionally significant. And I want you to understand something from the start. It's not about touching more, but touching better. Not about big movements, but generating a feeling her mind registers as authentic connection. It's something men tend to overlook because they're focused on the hug as a complete gesture. But for a woman, the emotional impact is in the small details. It's what a confident man conveys effortlessly. Let me speak clearly. This minimal contact is what makes her think about you after the hug. It's not exaggerated, not manipulated, not a trick. It's simply how your energy shows up in the moment. And even if you don't believe it, women are incredibly sensitive to it. Here's the controversial part. Many men think feminine desire activates with intensity, when in reality, it activates with presence. It's not about doing something grand, but leaving an emotional sensation in her body. A sensation that says, I'm here, I see you, I'm present in this moment with you, without haste, without tension, without masks. That level of presence transmits even through the smallest contact, and believe me, she feels it. Think of this not as a technical example, but as something deeply human. When you're calm, your intention pure, your body accompanying without forcing, the contact she receives is completely different. She doesn't feel excessive intensity, neediness, or anxiety. She feels something far more attractive to her: naturalness. Because when a man acts naturally, a woman can relax. And when she relaxes, she connects. And when she connects, the moment becomes memorable. What really makes the difference isn't how long you hug her, how hard, or how close. It's that silent sensation of emotional connection your energy transmits, even with the smallest gesture. That touch that doesn't seek to impress but to accompany. That presence that doesn't try to provoke but to share the moment. And look, I know almost no one talks about this so directly. Most talk about techniques, strategies, psychological tricks. But the truth is much simpler and more human. A woman remembers a man who made her feel safe, seen, and accompanied, even with the most minimal contact. It's the contact that stays in her memory not because it's physical, but because it's emotional. And emotion always beats visual impact or strength. Now, the controversial part. If the contact you transmit is nervous, awkward, or anxious, she remembers that too. That's why many men linger in limbo without knowing why a woman pulls away. It's not that they did something specifically wrong. It's that the contact they offered lacked the calm and presence she needed to feel emotionally comfortable. So hold on to this idea. Minimal contact isn't small. It's significant. It's subtle but powerful. It doesn't invade but connects. It doesn't draw attention but leaves an imprint. Because in the end, what a woman remembers isn't the grandeur of your gesture, but how present you were in it. Why do most men hug too hard or too fast? I want you to pay attention to this as if we were walking together and I was speaking to you with the calm we only use when we want the truth to really sink in. Many men hug too hard or too fast, not because they want to, but because they haven't realized what they're truly transmitting. And yes, I'm going to critique you a bit here, but from a place of respect, because it's something we've all done without realizing. The first thing I need to tell you directly but calmly is this. Hugging with force doesn't make you masculine. It makes you seem more anxious. And hugging too quickly doesn't make you more decisive. It makes you seem more desperate for approval. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because I know if no one tells you, you'll never wake up to what really matters. The truth, even if it sounds harsh, is simple. Many men hug this way because they're more focused on their own nervousness than on real connection with the woman. They act from haste, from insecurity, from that little internal fear. Am I doing it right? And when that fear controls your body, the hug loses the softness, intention, and presence it needs for her to feel comfortable and attracted. Now, listen to this very calmly. A woman doesn't decide if she'll connect with you based on the force of the hug, but on the energy behind it. When a man hugs too hard, she doesn't feel protection, she feels tension. When a man hugs too fast, she doesn't feel initiative, she feels uncontrolled impulse. When a man dives into the hug without breathing, without looking, without feeling the moment, she perceives he's more preoccupied with the gesture than the connection. And here's the gentle but necessary critique. Many men today act as if a hug were a competition to prove something, when in reality, it's an opportunity to transmit calm. You need to wake up. You need to realize that what makes a man attractive isn't physical intensity but emotional stability. Here's the part where I want to give you advice that can change everything. When you hug, don't rush the moment. Allow yourself to arrive calmly. Don't invade, don't hurry, don't cling. Because when you rush ahead, she pulls back emotionally. And when you hurry, she slows down. The speed and force of the hug say more about your mind than your body. The controversial truth is this: a woman feels more connection with a soft, present hug than an intense, fast one. Because softness shows control, calm shows security, presence shows emotional maturity. And I want you to wake up a bit here. If you always hug as if trying to prove something, ask yourself what fear you're hiding. The fear of not pleasing, not impressing, not being enough. She feels it not with words, but with your energy. But I also want you to hold on to something empowering. When you learn to hug from calm, from quiet intention, from conscious presence, the way women perceive you changes radically. She no longer sees you as impulsive but as stable, no longer anxious but confident, no longer seeking validation but as someone who knows exactly who he is. So wake up. You don't need intensity to attract. You need awareness. You need calm. You need presence. Because a present man always leaves an imprint, and that imprint isn't made with force but with control. The final gesture that separates an ordinary man from one who leaves a lasting imprint. Listen to this as if we were in a quiet place, you sitting beside me. And I lowered my voice to tell you something almost no one mentions. But that makes the difference between a man who goes unnoticed and one who stays in a woman's mind long after. The final gesture after the hug. That silent, almost invisible moment that happens right when the hug ends. That instant when many men disconnect, pull away quickly, or act as if the moment meant nothing. And right there, that's where the emotional magic is lost. Not intentionally, but from lack of awareness. I want you to understand this with absolute calm. What you do after the hug is as important as the hug itself. Because that small final gesture communicates to a woman how you truly feel, how present you are, and how emotionally confident you are. It's the transition from physical contact to emotional connection, and that's where the ordinary man differs from the one who leaves an imprint. Most men, and I'm not excluding you because we've all done it at some point, underestimate this instant. They pull away fast, look elsewhere, tense up, make a forced joke, or try to hide that the moment affected them. They do it without bad intention, but what she feels is disconnection. She senses he was more focused on the hug than the connection. She senses it was all physical, not emotional. Now the controversial part. A woman often remembers more what a man does after the hug than the hug itself, because that's where she perceives your authenticity. That's where she sees if you were present or just performing. That's where she detects if you were confident or pretending, and this is where I want to bring you to a higher level of awareness. The final gesture doesn't need to be grand. It doesn't need to be intense. It doesn't need to be romantic. What makes it impactful is that it's calm and congruent, that it reflects you were truly there, not just physically but emotionally. Think of it humanly, without exaggeration. When a man disconnects abruptly, the woman feels he was nervous. When a man pulls away suddenly, she feels he was uncomfortable. When a man avoids eye contact afterward, she feels he wasn't present. But when a man handles the transition calmly, without haste, without tension, without drama, the message is completely different. I'm here, I'm good, and this moment was natural for me. That's what gets etched emotionally, the tranquility, the presence, the inner security. I want you to pay close attention to this point. A man who handles the final gesture well appears more confident, more stable, and more emotionally mature than 90% of men out there. Not by what he does, but by how he does it. Because here's the essence. Feminine connection doesn't activate with intensity. It activates with emotional consistency. It activates when what you do aligns with what you transmit. It activates when your presence is constant, not intermittent. What truly separates an ordinary man from one who leaves an imprint is that one ends the hug as if nothing happened, while the other ends it with calm, attention, and authenticity. So remember this. It's not the hug that makes her think of you. It's how you linger in her energy. That final gesture, calm, natural, without haste, is the one she doesn't forget because in that instant, she feels who you really are. Now that we've reached the end, I want you to stay with me a moment longer because what I'm about to say isn't just controversial. It's uncomfortable for many men, but absolutely necessary if you want to genuinely improve your connections with women. Here's the truth. Most men don't fail at hugs from lack of technique. They fail because they don't know how to be emotionally present. That's the real problem. That's the point no one admits. That's the detail that affects more than any physical gesture could fix. You can learn postures, rhythms, intensities. But if mentally you're disconnected, anxious, uncertain, or too self-focused, none of it will work. The body can't transmit what the mind doesn't feel. And a woman, even without analyzing it, always notices. The most controversial, and perhaps the most honest thing you'll hear today is this. Many men hug from fear, not from presence. Fear of not being enough, fear of not pleasing, fear of not doing it right. Fear the moment won't go as planned. But I'm telling you this calmly, respectfully, and with the intention that you truly wake up. No woman connects deeply with a man acting from fear. She connects with the one who's truly there in the moment, without internal masks, without trying to impress, without overthinking every move. She connects with the man comfortable in his own energy. And that's where you come in, because if you've made it to the end, it means you have the willingness to change, improve, become more aware, and that already places you well above most. Now I want you to join this conversation with me. I want you to go to the comments and share your experience. How do you feel when you hug? What moment has marked you? What mistakes have you noticed in yourself? Or what change do you want to start making?